In today's Farm Report, many producers know that if they can avoid having to feed stored feeds, it'll help on their cost of production. Emily Wilmis with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office shares some tips when it comes to grazing pasture lands for maximum cost efficiency.
Beef producers know that the majority of their cattle feed comes from forage. Research has found that producers who graze cattle longer during the year had lower costs of production compared to producers who fed more stored or purchased feed. So, the longer your animals are out on pasture harvesting their own forage, the greater the opportunity to keep your production costs down. Two options to extend your grazing season are utilizing alfalfa regrowth or feeding corn residues. The following information is from Greg Como, Dennis Johnson, and Bill Head of the West Central Research and Outreach Center in Morris. Alfalfa is a great option for high-quality forage in fall, as it is widely grown and already available on many farms. Normally, it is recommended that alfalfa be grazed in fall only after it goes dormant. However, research is being conducted on the effect of grazing alfalfa through the fall. Preliminary observations imply that moderate fall grazing does not stress plants as much as cutting for hay. Therefore, the risk of winter injury may be less when grazed in fall than when cut for hay. Besides grazing alfalfa regrowth, you can also use corn residues. The corn husks and leaves left in the field after corn harvest can make great forage in fall. Forage quality of corn residues is generally not high enough to meet the nutritional needs of lactating or growing animals, but can adequately maintain dry pregnant cows. Grazing corn residues can be one of the lowest cost methods of providing forage. Strip grazing will make more efficient use of corn residues. With any fall grazing strategy in Minnesota, one risk is that snow will make fall forage inaccessible. You may have enough stockpiled grasses, alfalfa regrowth, and corn stalks available for grazing until April. However, a thick blanket of snow can ruin plans for fall pasturing. The key is to be flexible. Obviously, it's unrealistic to expect to graze through winter every year in Minnesota. However, there are many opportunities to keep animals out on pasture through October and even November. As you begin to plan your feeding program for the rest of the year, consider the economic advantages of extending your grazing season. Keeping your cattle on pasture, harvesting their own forage, will help reduce your production costs. This is Emily Wilmis with University of Minnesota Extension.
More money to help schools serve more nutritious meals and help schools encourage students to eat more nutritious foods. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack at the Press Club in Washington, D.C. Tuesday announcing $8 million going to 19 states.
$2.6 million is going to be provided to assist those states in upgrading the professional standards of the folks who are working in those kitchens and in those cafeterias. That's an extraordinarily important component. We want to partner with schools to make sure that we have the highest level of professionalism in those cafeterias, and we know how important that is to school nutrition personnel.
Vilsack said $5.6 million will go to help schools do things to encourage kids to try more fruits and vegetables and such in the cafeteria.
It may be the way in which it's displayed. There may be opportunities for contests and so forth that can encourage more participation. That requires resources, and in order to make it easier for school districts to have those resources, we provide the $5.6 million.
Vilsack said for some schools, meeting new meal nutrition standards is a challenge, which this funding will help them meet. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
The 2014 Farm Bill brought a host of new programs for producers around the United States, including the Margin Protection Program for dairy producers. Emily Wilmis with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office has this friendly reminder about the sign-up deadline.
Dairy farmers should be well aware by now that they have a little over 2 weeks to make their 2016 decisions for the Margin Protection Program. The 2016 enrollment deadline is September 30th. You'll remember that MPP allows producers to protect their production margin by selecting a coverage level between $4 and $8 per hundredweight. If you enrolled in MPP last year, you must re-enroll for 2016. If you didn't enroll last year, you once again need to decide whether to enroll or not. If you enrolled last year and do not go into the FSA office to re-enroll, you will automatically default to the $4 coverage level. After experiencing the Margin Protection Program in 2015, we all have a better idea of how the program works now. Be sure to keep in mind that MPP is meant to function like insurance. You don't pay your car insurance hoping to get into an accident or pay your home insurance, hoping your house starts on fire. However, you pay for the coverage in case something bad happens. It's the same concept with the margin protection program. You want to cover yourself in case something bad happens in the markets, but you shouldn't necessarily hope to get a payment. With that in mind, you should consider how much coverage you want in 2016. Our Ag Business Management team here in Extension recommends using one of three methods. The first is catastrophic coverage. That would be to enroll in the program at the base $4 level and pay only the $100 administration fee. Historically, this method would have resulted in payments in 2009 and 2012. This strategy does not offer a lot of protection, but it is very low cost. The second strategy to consider is risk management. This provides strong coverage at a fairly low cost. After the $650 coverage mark, premiums take a considerate jump up, so covering at $6.50 level is a good way to protect yourself. This won't maximize payments, but it's a good way to manage risk by covering the income gap in low margin years. The final strategy is to maximize predicted net return. This strategy requires quite a bit of homework. Producers can use the MPP decision tool to try to predict what markets will do and utilize those results to select their coverage level. This strategy could result in the highest returns, but it requires more work since you have to do a lot of analysis with the decision tool. Also keep in mind that the tool does not guarantee what prices will be in the future. Whatever strategy you use, make sure you do your homework so you can make an educated decision and one that is.
Coming up this Friday, another big round of Agriculture Department crop reports.
The star of the show during report day is going to be U.S. corn and soybean yields.
USDA's Outlook Board Chairman Seth Meyer, he says the folks at the USDA's National Ag Statistics Service, NASS, have been out looking at thousands of fields to see what's happened to crops over this past month.
As the crop matures, there are more things that NASS can go out and measure, and that improves the precision with the answer that they're giving.
So in the early morning hours of Friday, the Statistics Service will give the answer, the new crop production forecasts, to Meyer's Outlook Board.
Once we figure out what size crop we have here in the United States, we'll also be looking at what other wheat crops they have in Europe, Russia and Ukraine, and other corn and soybean and oilseed crops around the world as well too. Then we'll look at what kind of trade position that puts us in terms of how much we expect to export in the coming year.
The board also will forecast ending stocks, domestic use, and average prices for most crops, along with making new forecasts for livestock production and prices. All of these reports coming Friday, noon Eastern Time. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.